How to do this YouTube video. I tell you, I'm learning. I learned how to smile. I finally got that down. Okay, smiling is easy. I just didn't know when. But anyway, we're going to talk about coding for my students that may be in the step-by-step book. And so we're talking about coding. And we're talking about chapter 5, which is dealing with chapter 3 of your ICD-10 book. Remember that there are 21 chapters in your ICD-10 book, 21 chapters. And in the chapter 3 of your ICD-10 book, it's going to talk about diseases of blood-forming organs, certain disorders involving the immune mechanism, the dominant and non-dominant sides, being right-handed or left-handed, the disease of the circulatory system, hypertension, hypertension with heart disease, chronic kidney disease and hypertension, how that plays a role together. You have myocardial infarctions, and you have disease of the respiratory system. That's all part of that. And so that's going to be it for that. I want to touch up on that chapter 3 has those are coding notes for chapter 3. Okay, deals with nutritional anemias, hemolytic anemias, aplastic and other anemias, and other bone marrow failure syndromes, coagulation defects as far as blood clotting, the immune systems, hemorrhagic conditions, other disorders of the blood-forming organs, intraoperative post-procedural complications of the spleen, certain disorders involving the immune system. Okay. Now here are the exclusions to the chapter 3, the coding notes, which are exclusions. And it gives you exclusions about how to code for M35. Use instead P00, P96. So let me go back to that. And what I'm going to do is do a separate video for the ICD-10 book and the CPT book. Okay. The ICD-10 book has 21 chapters. And so each chapter has its own representation of the systems of the body and what it does. And so if you're going to be a coder, you need to be familiar with the ICD-10 book from front to end. Okay. You're not going to memorize everything. What's important is that you need to know what's in there and where to find it. And that's why when I teach my students, I teach them page by page. I start off from the cover of the book. It's kind of like teaching kindergarten all over again. And, you know, you have the illustration of the book and you show, ooh, this is the color, the illustration. Ooh, let's open the cover. Ooh, you have the publication. Ooh, and you go page by page. You'll be amazed going page by page of that book, what's being missed and what can help you. And I do that with my students simply because I'm not going to be with you every time you go to work. I'm not going to be in your back pocket. Yes, you can call me. You can text me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be available every time you call or text. So I have to teach you how to use your tools so that you can take care of yourself and not me take care of you while I'm trying to do other things. Once you promote and graduate and finish my class, you need to go out there and swim the best way you know how. You got to take a floaty with you out there. Take a floaty. If you have to get on a kayak for a minute, get on a kayak for a minute. But at some point, you're gonna have to learn how to swim in that water, be it tread or boat or float. You're gonna have to know how to swim in that water. Okay. All right. Fantastic. So I'm going to come back and talk about chapter 5 more extensively when I have my books, because I don't have my books. I'm in my classroom, but I'm in a different classroom that does have all my books. So I have to wait till I'm at home to talk about that. Okay, so in short, let's go back to the slide here. You have hypertension. You have where it deals with the heart. Let's go back up here to the front. Okay, so slide number 2, where it talks about chapter 3, ICD-10 CM, diseases of the blood-forming organs, certain disorders involving the immune system. You have frequently reported diagnosis codes. The frequently ones are dealing with anemia, okay, and they're beginning with D. So they're within the category range of D50 through D64. Okay, you have coagulation defects. These are the ones that may have to take blood thinners or things of that nature. Their diagnosis codes are within the range of D65 to D69. Other disorders of the blood and blood-forming organs, you have D70, D77. Okay, and so those are really important to know. Again, like I said, you're not going to memorize these codes. Just get it out your head. That book is this big. Please, really? No, you're not going to memorize all of that. No. You'll memorize the ones that you frequently use, that you will. And remember, the coding books, be it diagnosis and procedure codes, are updated and changed and issued out every November 1st of the year. So please be aware of that, of new publications, new books. It's really important for your career. Okay, now you have dominant, non-dominant sides. We've talked about that before in body structures for the anatomy physiology class. We're talking about diseases of the circulatory system, and that plays a role with the blood. The I-100 through I-99 reports conditions of rheumatic fever, hypertension, ischemic heart disease, cerebral vascular disease. Within the I-00 or I-99 excludes 2 notes indicating categories for this, such as neoplasms. Neoplasms are your cancers. When you go to try to find your cancers in volume 2 of the book, if you will, you have to look in the neoplasm section first, find your cancers, and then verify it in volume 1. And we'll talk about that, the order of how you look up codes, okay? Neoplasm or cancer codes are within C00 through D49 codes. You have signs, symptoms, and abnormal clinical laboratory findings not elsewhere classified. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, like I used to tell my students, that if you learn the notes of the ICD book, and at the bottom, it gives you colorful codes or symbols that tells you how to go about coding something. You cannot go wrong. You have to trust it, okay? You cannot go wrong. And so that ICD-10 book is your guide, okay? That CPT book is your guide. Once you understand sequencing and what's excusable, what's not excusable, what's broadly used for a diagnosis code, which not is broadly used for a diagnosis code, you're gonna pick this up. Now, normally I tell my students it takes about 6 months to a year for you to really get comfortable in your craft. After 6 months to a year, you should be able to know how to work just about anywhere. You just have to understand the rules of that particular specialty or the rules of that particular body system that you're coding for, okay? And you can work and you can do the job. It's not hard. It's really not hard, okay? If you can make it through school and make it through coding, and understand what you're doing. And school is not hard. It's just following instructions. My sister's first grade teacher used to say 99% of learning is by following instructions. I hope you take note of that. Very good. Okay. All right. So you have hypertension. Hypertension can be benign. It can be essential. It can be malignant, it can be primary, it can be systemic. Okay, so all of those things play a role in hypertension. It just tells you what type of hypertension. These are adjectives of what type of hypertension. Okay, um, sometimes you can develop hypertension during pregnancy, which is temporary, and then after you have the baby, your blood pressure goes down, and you have some women that develop that, and so sometimes those diagnoses are called preeclampsia. Okay, hypertension of heart disease includes conditions reported as myocarditis, cardiomegaly, ill-defined or unspecified heart disease, when conditioned due to hypertension, hypertensive heart failure, hypertensive heart disease without heart failure. So all of those things. Some heart conditions not stated to be due to hypertension or hypertensive report the heart disease and hypertension separately. Okay, here we go in this coding era of the words due to and with and all those type of things. You're going to find out within the coding rules if you should include this diagnosis code with this diagnosis code or exclude it. That's why you have to read your book, your ICD book, page by page. Read it. Be familiar with it. You know, like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that about exclusion codes. Oh, I didn't know that about inclusion codes. Oh, I didn't know that was what that was for. Oh, you'll be amazed what's in those books. Your ICD book from front to end, page by page, is your guide. It's your guide. Trust it. They wrote it. Okay? If there's any discrepancies, blame it on who? World Health Organization. That's who wrote the books. Okay. Moving right along. You have pacemakers. How to ways to identify a pacemaker. You have to code it as well. Pacemaker is going to require a procedure code, not so much just a diagnosis code. Chronic kidney disease and hypertension. Okay, so you have the different stages of chronic kidney disease, which is end-stage renal disease. End-stage renal disease have 6 different stages. You have stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And usually on 6, maybe 5, maybe 4, temporarily a person is on dialysis, but 6, they're definitely on dialysis. Why does that play a role in your heart and circulatory? Glad you asked. Because with your blood, with the hemoglobin, it brings food to the body. It also gives oxygen throughout the body. And so blood just doesn't go from your heart to lungs down to your toes and back to your heart and your head. No, it goes through all the systems of your body. It helps know how much urine, uric acid to secrete from the kidneys. That plays a role with your blood. How much bile to secrete from the gallbladder area. That plays a role with your blood. How we go through the liver and come out, those are filters. You have natural filters of the body, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver. Those are your natural filters of the body. They filter things out as they go in. And so all that plays a role in the circulatory system. And so it's necessary to learn that. And understand the blood, so that when doctors do lab work for a complete blood count, or they do lab work for different reasons, it could be a lipid panel or something, it can basically tell you the diagnosis of that person. Okay, it could tell you a lot about that person, laboratory-wise, pathologically. And so that's why it's important as a coder. I don't know if y'all ever watched this show, and I know I am wrong or right, maybe it's okay for me to interject this, but one of my favorite shows that I really like to watch is called The Good Doctor. And on that show, The Good Doctor, you have this physician, this young man who has autism, and he has this phenomenal mind where he can memorize the whole part of the body, the pictures, the functions. And it's like a mechanic hooking up your car to a diagnostic machine, and it knows how to read everything in the body. And that's what it looks like in his brain when you can imagine what he's thinking. And he can see how this body functions, and maybe how something is not functioning well to cause this to not function right, or what plays a role with this not functioning right, you know. And so remember, we talked about in the other video yesterday, Memorial Day, we talked about syndromes, we talked about manifestation codes, things of that nature. Syndromes are a conglomerate of systems that have something going wrong, if you will, all at the same time. That's a syndrome. You have manifestation codes where one organ of the body or one type of thing, such as diabetes mellitus, dealing with the pancreas, can affect the heart, the circulatory system. And so how does it affect that? Is when the pancreas shoots out blood or shoots out insulin too fast in the circulatory system. And you wonder why every time you prick yourself to take your blood sugar, it reads your blood, because it can read the sugar in your blood. So that's why all this chimes together and makes sense. And I love that show, The Good Doctor. So if you ever get a chance to watch it, it's amazing. Please watch it. Shows like Bones, shows like House MD, Grey's Anatomy, everybody watches that. The Practice, that's a good show too. I mean, those are deep shows. Those are real, real deep shows. But I like shows like Bones, House MD, The Good Doctor, because to me, they go real deep. Anatomy Physiology, they go deep too, but they have a narrative, which I like. It kind of explains the outcome of things at the end of the show with a narrative. The Good Practice, it explains like stuff that's normally not talked about outside of what's common in the lay world of what people should know, but it's good, and I enjoy it. I love medical shows, period. Nurse Jackie, that's another one. Scrubs, I haven't indulged into Scrubs too much, so I have to maybe go on Netflix or somewhere, maybe Hulu, and find it. I have a Netflix account, so maybe I'll find it. I don't know. But anyways, quite interesting. Okay, coming back to the slide, we have slide 12 here, where it talks about myocardial infarction, acute heart attack with occlusion of the coronary artery. You have STEMI, non-STEMI. You have subsequent STEMI, non-STEMIs. You have complications of the heart. Also, you have combination codes that identify the condition and causative of the organism. And that's about it. It was something I wanted to touch on. Oh, about myocardial infarctions. Myocardial infarctions, if you ever seen that term, especially in your SOAP notes. And remember what I said, S is subjective, it's the conversation between the nurse and the patient. O is objective, it's the conversation between the doctor and the patient. And assessment is billers and coders. That's our world all day long. Okay. Then you have plan. Okay. And a lot of times within the assessment part, when you see the written word myocardial infarction, that means that person had a heart attack, or trans ischemic disease, that means that person had a stroke or a heart attack, one or the other. Um, so you want to pay attention to that. I love what I do. Um, I would say to those that want to do remote billing from home, you have to be in your craft at least 2 to 5 years. I would say 5 years. So you can understand all what it takes, the clearinghouses. You have to understand the IT significance of privacy and HIPAA, how all that plays a role in working from home. If you're going to work a remote job, is what they call it. Working from home and billing is called remote. Okay. And so I love it. I work as a consultant outside of what I do, and I can go in and consult with a physician's office and give me an hour and look at their have permission to look at their records, and I can basically tell you what's going on with their revenue cycles, with their money returns. I could basically tell you that. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap this up for this video, and I hope to see you on the next video. Ciao.